You're listening and watching Rashkin Report. I'm your host, Yuri Rashkin, and we are chatting today. I think we're having like this long kitchen conversation, as is really a Moscow tradition, except that we're doing it via Skype, and you're all invited to participate by watching and leaving a comment or two.
There's this lovely place, Turkmenistan, right? I'm sure you've heard of it, right?
I have.
I was brought up just like you have, with very much anti-imperialist views. We would consider Russia as a sort of, ever-expanding plague, that would take over the planet and suppress the native cultures, right? But if you think about it, if you look at any major language like French, English, it always came with destruction of diversity, linguistic diversity. Any of our major languages is imperial language. It pretty much eats up the smaller cultures, and the cultural heritage of like Russian literature, French literature, or British literature has to do with empires, just as architecture and music has. With
All right.
all of my anti-imperial views, but the question I would ask myself: what is the role of the empire? Right, the role of the empire. I've read this in clever books. It's not my opinion. Like we talked about yesterday, is that they would provide safe territory for doing business. In other words, post office, mail, and quality roads, which makes the Russian Empire with its wonderful mail service, Почта России, and its roads, makes it a failed empire, pretty much.
Okay, are you talking about like a social contract where the government, where the people are subservient to the government because government provides certain services, and when that contract breaks?
Exactly. The first thing the Romans did when they would occupy a new town, they would put up a post in the very center of the town that would start with the words, "A citizen of Rome has the right," and a list of things that a citizen of Rome was entitled to. Exactly. Unfortunately, I think the time of empires generally has passed. We're evolving. Yeah. But
well, I don't know. I mean, I think you're very much living in an empire or a country that views itself as empire. So really, it seems that you think that the empire is dead.
I mean, yes, I'm living it. Yes, so it doesn't make the point any less legit. It's going to blow. Yeah.
But I mean, it's interesting because Nietzsche said God is dead. And he meant that the way that we viewed God and this concept, it's over. And now you're saying that empire is dead?
Say again?
So are you saying that empire is dead?
As a notion, I think so, or any sort of vertical society. I've been doing a lot of work for psychologists, emotional intellect, all of this stuff. And when we talk about culture, when you have a culture where you have the leader who you bow to, it's not very encouraging for creativity. And right now, people that create new things, only a free person can create something new. A slave cannot do creative labor. Right?
Really? Because there was a lot of scientists who were sitting in Stalin's gulag who were doing perfectly creative things, I hear.
True that, but I would believe they would have done much better at MIT, and that is the reason why all of the intelligent ones actually go there. So it's something that needs not to be discussed. Our history of treating scientists like shit, shooting them and doing whatever, I don't think it's a valid argument, considering that a lot of the like Pavel Florensky, the guy who he has done a lot. The city of Norilsk, and he was a priest. He was, I think, he was shot. He has discovered how to get iodine from seaweed. He has discovered the technology for building in the polar regions. The city of Norilsk is built on his ideas, where all of the buildings are raised on supports. So they don't heat the ground, so they don't sink. There are plenty of cases of the Soviets stomping scientists into the ground and just killing them pretty much. So yes, I would say having creatives live in a safe environment where where they don't have their fingers broken for not signing.
Honestly, Peter, is it fair to even say that this is a Soviet thing? Because it seems like just kind of a Russian thing. Because the Russian okay, so
but it's a Muslim thing too. and it's a
All right,
Christian,
we're gonna go there. Okay.
and it's a Christian thing. It's an old thing. It's an old thing where the rule of power is, then that's pretty much it. Whoever has the stick is right. That's it. That I was brought up with the ideas of the empire being something terrible, right? Right now, I'm living in Moscow, and I see people from Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and all of these other wonderful places moving here to work, right? Because by the time Russians arrived there, they were living in the Middle Ages. And when the Russians have departed, they went back to the Middle Ages. I'll tell you a couple of words about Turkmenistan. It's kind of like North Korea. When we talk about having portraits of the leader on every corner, to me that just speaks stupidity. I have no other words for it. It's just people are being dumbified. It's
Well, perhaps somebody's feeling insecure.
Yeah, so let me get back to Turkmenistan. This guy, every week he's on TV and he's doing a new thing. On Monday he's playing electric guitar and sings. On Tuesday he has just designed a new car. Now women are not allowed to drive, and all of the cars in the country have to be white. Right? He has renamed one of the month. I think it was September, after his mother, and another month, I don't remember which one, he renamed after the book he wrote, which is called The Power of Spirit. Right, so he had 2 months renamed for his bullshit, and that's what happens when the society that was pretty savage and medieval by the time Russians came in and built all of the factories or whatever else it built, reverts to its natural state.
Yeah, but perhaps Turkmenistan's golden age is either in the future or at some point in the past. It has some beautiful architecture. I'm sure there's
Absolutely
literature,
not.
culture,
Don't be so sure.
right?
Don't sure. But you know what it is? It's like what I'm trying to say, that other than being occupants, for a lot of the when we talk about the territories we've covered, we have also in some places brought literacy where there wasn't any. And
Now,
so
wait a
forth.
minute. Here's the question. Are you arguing here with certain people in certain places not being as like first world countries, or are you saying that dictatorships are holding people back? Because when you have more access to education, less repressive
Exactly.
government, then just things get better. Period.
I think education, yeah, because once again, getting back to the trip to Albania, well, I know
That
it's
changed your
ridiculous.
life. Yes, go ahead.
No, but it's interesting. I was at the gas station somewhere in Serbia, some wild place, and suddenly this older, beaten man starts speaking great English. The gas station owner, right? And so we start talking. I'm very surprised. And I said, "Oh, I used to work for the Americans as a translator, and I think he went to Afghanistan or something like that." So I asked him, "What's it like?" And his answer was very short and concise. People have no education. They're not very intelligent. You tell them you give them a machine gun. You tell them to go kill, and they go to heaven. They do it. That's it. That's his short explanation. Poverty and lack of education. You know. Yes,
Is
and
it the fault of the people or is it the fault of the ruler?
do we have to speak of the fault? It's just a fact. It's a development level.
Yeah, but it's due to
So
certain factors.
placing places.
Isn't history something we can learn something from?
Of course it is. Yes. And in
So
fact,
in the case of all of these cultures, do you feel it is the people that are
no,
unintelligent, uneducated,
okay.
or is it leadership that put them there? Created these circumstances.
Well, it's kind of a vicious cycle. You have the
Sure.
leadership that is not willing to have its people grow, so they're easily controlled.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. We're not the first one to think of this question, and people say that. Well, some intelligent person once said, other than us, the two of us, is that the people deserve their rulers. Another thing, we had this police officer arrested, right? He was arrested for. Well, let's put it this way: they found like 2 tons of cash in his apartment. And this guy was like head of HR department or something, something like
Now,
that.
I
And
mean, Russian ruble isn't very valuable, but 2 tons of rubles is still a lot of money.
no, it's still, and it's some dollars and euros and gold too, and so they started busting this level of thieves over the past year or two. And when the Russian looks at these news, it's like, okay, this colonel, this and that, has 2 tons of cash. To us, it's like, okay, someone who had 8 tons of cash now has 10 tons of cash. It's clan wars. Someone is made a scapegoat for the crowd to enjoy. And it's just sort of like redistributing wealth amongst the elite. They start eating each other. Our chief opposition figure, Alexei Navalny, who I personally, it's like people talk a lot of shit about him, but the stuff that he gets on Medvedev and all of the other politicians in Russia is of a much higher quality than the materials that are out there against him. So I choose to believe him, because you see how cynical we are. But they say that the information that he publishes on the elite corruption ring is actually part of a sort of internal war. They actually feed him. Okay, now we leak on this guy, now we leak on that guy. That his sources are actually from Kremlin.
Well, yeah, and in general, just the mere fact that he is not in jail or dead is used against him.
Exactly, and with any new opposition figures that ever appears, Russian would always ask, well, how come he's alive? It's like, if he's alive, there must be something fucking wrong with him.
Oh, yeah, it's only good Russian is a dead Russian is what Russians say to each other.
Yep, every morning. The new ideologies are trying to sell to people, and it's really scary. It's called the legacy, наследие, right, of governance. In other words, the Tsar, Lenin, Stalin, Putin, it's all one continuous thing, and they were all great. The government is good. It was always good. The government is Russia. You have to love it. It was always good. And the fact that they were killing each other doesn't matter. And that's it takes a bit of insanity to accept, but insanity is a good thing. It's.
But it's okay. So if we're gonna jump to that, but not lose the thread of what we were talking before, it sounds like what Russia is right now has most respect for and promotes the idea of longevity in government, where you have a leader that's there for a long time. That means the leader is good because he's there for a long time. This kind of a circular logic. So if you have Ivan the Terrible, who was there for like 70 years or something, good. Stalin, 25, 30 years, good. And so the idea of change is the bad idea right now. Okay.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it doesn't seem like that much is changing. So there is certain longevity, because the same way that in 1950s and 60s, Soviets were willing to poke a finger in the eye of America by publishing music of black people, even though they don't care about black people. Now they're continuing to do the same idea of poke finger in the eye, although more successfully. Maybe it wasn't the eye anymore that they were poking now, but it's still the same result. So what's the difference? Maybe that is the Soviet-Russian legacy, sticking fingers in everybody else.
You know what it is? I would agree with that. But when you say that nothing is happening, I would like to quote. Maybe it would be an exact quote, because I'm translating from Russian, since it's the book I've read in Russian. Rabbit from Alice in Wonderland. In order to stand still, you have to run really fast. Right?
I believe I believe that is the white or the black queen in Alice through the looking glass or whatever, on the other side of the mirror, that whole thing. Because she meets one of the chess characters and they run, and then they're in the same place, and they're like, that's how it's supposed to be, that's how it works.
Exactly,
Lewis Carroll.
nothing happening in Russia is what we're experiencing now is an evolutionary explosion. So us standing still is us getting royally screwed because our Sergey Brin from Google, whoever else, all of our talented people that are living, that's us standing still. No, they're going to the States like you're in the States, and so many other talented guys, So Russia's standing still. It's it's a stand still before you fall into a grave, and that's just that's what it is.
But it's I think on that level that there's just more people there than the system needs.
Yeah, we're superfluous. Absolutely. The way I'd like to phrase it is that human life is a negative value in Russia. If you die, they'll only sigh with relief. And that's why basically our hospitals shut down. We, palm oil, we set huge record for, we use it in our dairy products, and we use industrial grade palm oil that is normally used for greasing rails. That's the stuff we eat. So basically, yes, they do their best. Yes. Oh, my mom just came back from Italy and check this out. What I got? Look what I got. This is Parmigiano cheese. When the Russian tourists go.
Are you gonna sell it shredded a little bit at a time?
Yeah. Savor the motherfucker. Yeah, exactly. So a Russian shopping cart is pretty much. You have a Russian tourist. Okay, before we take the plane, okay, we're going to buy a shitload of cheese. That's what we do. And to me, it's the absence of cheese and toilet paper are like the telltale signs of the of the collapse of the state. Because it's if it. Well, I've seen that in the late 80s, and when I look at the situation with cheese, to me it says, okay, it's going to blow soon. This is if we can't make cheese, this is bad. Really, we're not going to get occupied. We'll be slowly eaten by China. I made a Chinese friend a couple of years ago, and we had this lovely conversation. You see, the last census in China, the error margin was 150 million. Which is about the population of Russia, more than, right? So the Chinese plus minus is our population. I'm telling this Chinese guy, basically we'll sort of, blend in with other races and disappear.
Well, it's interesting because so Chinese, give or take, is the Russian population of Russia. Give or take a population of a huge country, but that does bring up an important point, because I think Russia's selling point as far as it's terrorizing the world is not just that they will buy everything, but that they can bury the world in corpses, because people are cannon fodder, and it doesn't really matter to the government. Oh, we had massive losses, okay, but I think Chinese have a lot more people. So I think that just bragging about how many corpses you can produce, or how many soldiers, then that's not, that doesn't really work with China, I would imagine.
Can I tell you something? Absolutely, I would fully agree. And when we talk about, you see, it was always the biggest card Russia has played. The number of corpses it can produce. Throwing our old people into the fire, and that shit doesn't fly in the 21st century. It just doesn't work. It's and population-wise, technology-wise, we have technology from the 60s and the 70s. Yes, we have been investing money into new weapons, but we're nowhere near the States in terms of military budget. It's just it's just funny.
That reminds me of a Soviet joke that I heard as a kid in the 80s, where they were making fun of Chinese in the 70s or 60s, and they said, okay, so Chinese communists, in this planning attack, they'll have a million of people on the left, million of people on the right, and in the middle, our pride, our tank. And and it seems like now the joke is almost about Russia now.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah.
Well, just a few years, really. Maybe 50. Peter, I think we should take a break here and see what kind of response we generate from this conversation alone. But I think that anybody who wants to know about Russia learned a thing or two or three. My guest today was Peter Evgenev, an interpreter, translator in Moscow, Russia, who joined us directly from a kitchen in Moscow. Peter, thank you so much.
Thank you. Chat with you soon, man.
Sounds good.